Hi, and welcome to the Parkin Real Estate Podcast, where we talk all things real estate, business related, and really anything happening in your life. If you've got a few minutes, we'd love to have you sit back, relax, and enjoy what we have to offer. Hello. Welcome wherever you are listening to. We are live with episode number 6 of the Parkin podcast. It's Saturday, November 11th, and we're doing a weekly recap of all things real estate and everything that has happened in the Canadian business world as well as the North American business world, and all things to do with Canadian real estate and how it affects each and every one of us. My name is Ken Parkin. If this is the first time that you are listening to the podcast, thank you so much. I appreciate all the listeners and subscribers, and your comments and feedback are fantastic, and it helps me improve on this ever-evolving podcast. Today I want to talk about 3 stories, 3 different articles. They're all actually written by the Huffington Post business section, and as we go through 2018 and venture off into 2019, 2018 has been a very interesting real estate market. Very interesting. We've seen a lot of highs, a couple lows, those being more to do with the different rules and regulations that have been put on the mortgage industry, and it's really softening up the market for buyers looking to make a move. I've got 3 articles here written by Daniel Tenser, though, from Huffington Post. Daniel does offer some very good insight, and I would highly recommend, if you're interested in anything real estate relating to Canada, Daniel's your man. So I wanted to talk about, I've got 3 articles. One is what you need to afford, what you need to earn to afford a single family home across Canada. I think that one's pretty cool. I'm going to start with that one. This article was written back on the 9th of November, but it's been pretty important probably this year, specifically because of mortgage rates. But it's amazing now what you need to earn in order to go and actually purchase a home. And it doesn't, what you earn doesn't actually matter if you don't have the down payment or deposit. So it's a twofold trifecta. But Daniel writes, housing affordability has become so strained in Canada that the priciest markets, have been so strained in Canada's pricing markets that if incomes don't catch up or housing prices don't stop, they're going to have to fall in order for people to afford or be able to move. Meaning the people that, live in these multi-million-dollar homes, specifically in Vancouver, they can trade between themselves, but there's no new buyers entering the market. And a lot of the foreign buyers have dried up simply because of taxes and rules and regulations. He goes on to say the data for third quarter of this year shows the cost of owning a home rose in 9 out of 10 major cities surveyed, with only Winnipeg being the one that showed just a minor improvement. Affordability has been deteriorating steadily for more than 3 years at this point. And I mean, it's if we go back and look at the last 3 years of this real estate market, 2016 and into 2017, the market was just on fire. Softer prices in Toronto and Vancouver, it didn't help home ownership costs because mortgage rates are on the rise and wages in those cities slid during the quarter. Economists Kyle Dams and Matthew Arsenio, apologies if I butcher those names, wrote in a report. In both Toronto and Vancouver, affordability is at its worst levels since 1990. Think about that. That's 28 years. It's crazy. Back then, the Bank of Canada pushed rates to double digits, far higher than they are today, making mortgages supremely unaffordable. And If you are watching on YouTube, I'm going to hold up a chart, and it's going to show Vancouver in red, Toronto in green, and Montreal in yellow. And it's going to show the percentage of median income needed to cover a mortgage in Canada. And really, I don't know if you can see that, but really Montreal stayed affordable for the most part. And Toronto and Vancouver shot up like crazy, specifically Vancouver. But Toronto and Vancouver sort of follow the same kinds of trends. The deterioration this quarter took place in Montreal and Ottawa, where it was rising prices on top of rising mortgage rates that took a bite out of affordability. But and specifically Ottawa, prices rose 10% annualized in the third quarter. Montreal, which is now eyeing a foreign buyer's tax. You got to remember, Montreal does not have a foreign buyer's tax that BC and Ontario do. They saw prices rise up 8%. 8%. These markets appear to be unaffected by rising interest rates and tighter credit standards, but the market conditions are strongly in favor in the minds of sellers right now. And it's true. In Montreal and Ottawa, I can see that based off the data. In Ontario, not so much. The market is now extremely balanced. Article goes on to say, all the same, Montreal and Ottawa remain among Canada's most affordable major cities. A mortgage payment on average eats up 32% of household income. In Montreal and Ottawa, it eats up 28.7%. Compare that to 68, just under 70% of income in Toronto. And get this, because this is an insane number, close to 80% of one's income in Vancouver. That is just nuts. The National Bank reports that Vancouver's real estate prices have risen to a point that you need to have a household income, okay, a household income of $238,000 to qualify for a conventional mortgage with 20% down on a detached home. And that's just slightly less than what you'd need to be in the Vancouver 1% Club. In that 1% Club, they earn $246,000 a year. So when you talk about affordability, now it is relative to a degree. A lot more people make a little bit more money in Vancouver, thus being able to sort of prop and keep that market up. But I digress. In Toronto, you need a total income of $159,000, just under $160,000, while in Quebec City, the most affordable major market, you can live in a single-family home, well, qualify, I guess, for $51,000 a year. Now, let's put this into context, okay? And I've had this conversation, and I don't want to say a debate, but I've had this conversation with other realtors and other professionals in the industry. The affordability, okay? The affordability is determined on household income, not one person's income, household income. And so that being said, two people earning $70,000 or $75,000 a year, you qualify for a mortgage in Toronto. And quite frankly, I know some people are going to say that, well, both of us aren't making that. In today's day and age, I think the average, if I had to guess, for a working professional, so someone who's not working at like a McDonald's or Tim Hortons, someone who has gone through schooling, has a career job, you're probably in the $50,000 to $80,000 range. 50 starting and 80 plus if you've probably been there 5 to 10 years. And we've had a very substantial and solid job market. So to find a job that you can make $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, I don't think is out of the question. I'm not here to argue whether or not it's common, but I feel like the more educated professional that has gone out and looked for a career and has chosen, which is another important thing, has chosen a career path that allows them to earn that money, they're probably making that money. So two people qualifying for $160,000 mortgage, to me, it's not out of the question. I don't think it's unreasonable. And quite frankly, that's for $1 million home. And if you live in the outskirts of Milton, in the GTA, Milton, Burlington, Hamilton, and more west, you can definitely find housing that is not $1 million. But a lot of cities are trending that way, which is fairly crazy. In Victoria, you need $150,000. In Hamilton, you need $104,000. Which probably brings that price range into an $800,000 to $700,000 mortgage, something like that. Even if interest rates trend upward, this article continues, we doubt that further deteriorations for affordability will occur. If income growth does not compensate for rate hikes, our view will be that home prices will have to adjust accordingly, and that is downward. That makes total sense. I'm not going to argue that. I think the least expensive markets, though, are going to go a lot higher, and we're seeing it now with sort of more out of main metropolitan areas. I don't know if that's a word. Like places like Caledon or Collingwood, or pick a town or city outside of Toronto. Keswick, they're now experiencing some crazy growth. So we have some interesting times happening with the affordability and our real estate market. My second article I want to talk about, another one written by Daniel Tenser with Huffington Post. He talks about young Canadians not interested in raising families in condos, and but they may have to, in my opinion. But Canadian young families are giving up on the dream of owning a single-family home, but it's not out of desire to live in an urban high-rise life. The cost has simply become too much, and this kind of piggybacks the last article I talked about. The key takeaway from a new study done by Sotheby's International Realty Canada, which found that if money were no object, 83% of young families would rather buy a detached home as opposed to any other type of housing. Only 5% would prefer condos. The popularity perception is that people in modern families have typically preferred multi-unit and city-centered locations, where in fact what the report shows is if price were no option, they would prefer a single-family home. And that is Brad Henderson, president and CEO of Sotheby's Canada. And I don't disagree with that, but there's some factors, and I'll talk about those. So is the dream of owning a detached home dying in Canada's largest city? What the data is telling us is that it's becoming harder and harder to achieve that objective, Henderson told Huffington Post. The price of housing has gone up faster than wages. Again, we're seeing the same topics brought up as these conversations happen, so that the dream of the detached home ownership is becoming more and more difficult. There's going to be a fairly significant intergenerational transfer of wealth over the next 10 to 15 years that will help arrest some of this trend. Another point I will talk about. Of course, inheritance will only help those whose parents have something to bequeath. Some economists have raised the alarm about the growing reliance of home buyers on their parents' wealth, arguing it could create a new kind of a dependence, where only the people whose families already own real estate can afford to step on the property ladder. But while Canada's younger families may be giving up on the detached home ownership, they're not giving up the confidence in the real estate market. 78% say they're expecting their real estate to appreciate faster than other investments. Third point I'll talk about. And while many condo dwellers would prefer to be in detached homes, they aren't necessarily disgruntled about their living situation. 93% said that they were very or somewhat satisfied with their living condition, and that report was brought up by a survey of 1,743 families in 4 metro areas in Vancouver. That took place August 9th to September 6th. So, number one, we're entering a job society, a market, a society, whatever you want to call it, where we are not dependent on going into an office. A lot of people now, and it's not everybody, and I don't have a 1 in 10 stat, but I would guess 1, 2, maybe 3 out of 10 have the ability to work from home now if you don't have to be face to face with a client. I know lots of people that work from home and are employed by large corporations. So that is one of the determining factors about not having to necessarily be in the metro area where you work. If you're working from home, you don't need to commute. So a lot of people are going, hey, we can move out of the city, if there's the affordability there, and still perform at our job. Number two, the transformation of wealth. And this is very important. 68%, and this stat goes back probably about 5 years ago, so I'd have to update it, but Brian Buffini of Buffini & Company dropped a stat where it was between 60 and 70%, I don't have the exact number, of millennials in Canada, baby boomers in Canada do not have a mortgage on their house. That can obviously change very quickly as HELOCs, home equity line of credits, are helping people basically live a retired life while using their house as the bank, and then when they die, they sell their house, and if they've used $500,000 of their equity in the house, say the house is worth $1 million, there's still $500,000 left, and they were able to live their life how they wanted to. So there is money in the system that isn't really accounted for, and that is wealthy or fairly wealthy families, and also paid off real estate by baby boomers. It's a very interesting situation. The last part talking about condo dwellers and that they aren't the appreciation of real estate. I in fact think that condos are going to be the next major value increase in real estate in the market. I really truly do. We've seen it a little bit already. Condos that are 5 years ago would be going for $500,000 are going for $800,000 now. We're talking about a significant increase, and the demand as our population ages for condos is going to go up significantly. So it's something that we need to take into consideration and think about as we move forward in our real estate market. The last article I want to talk about, Toronto has a tech boom, and it's going to keep this real estate frenzy going. Third article by Daniel Tenser with the Huffington Post. Booming tech industries and rapidly rising, helping house prices rise. Toronto's housing market has seen a slowdown since the new non-resident tax successfully pushed out many foreign buyers. But a forecast from a real estate agency called Engel and Volkers says a new phenomenon is about to take place as the driver of Toronto's housing boom, and that is the tech industry. He goes on to talk about and give a bunch of different stats about how Toronto places with tech centers in the world. Number 1 is San Francisco. That's pretty obvious. Seattle would be number 2. That's also pretty obvious. Washington, number 3. Toronto comes in at number 4 at 65.3%. Sorry, I don't know what that 65.3 is, but they come in at number 4. Maybe it's the amount of jobs per capita, but Toronto, it's about to intensify. Microsoft last month, that would be in August, plans new headquarters for Toronto's core. Intel this month said that they're coming in New York. There's a lot of, I don't know, we're talking about Toronto, and I don't know why there's a thing here about New York. But anyways, that success is coming at a high price. And he makes a great point. Higher paying jobs are only going to make the real estate market go up even more. HIT believes that Toronto should be viewed as being one of the elite group of North American cities where tech talent and capital has been concentrated and where real estate prices have shot through the roof. Toronto is on the same uphill trajectory and growing fast as other North American tech markets like Seattle, San Francisco, and Washington. And I don't disagree with him. I think, as we see how our economy is going in terms of jobs. We're talking, and with regards to technology, and we're losing. Not, I wouldn't say we're losing, but we're just not adding that many manufacturing jobs. But we're adding a lot of tech jobs, and this is a topic that I want you kind of think about, and I would actually be interested to hear your opinion on. Talking about, for example, like a McDonald's or Wendy's, it doesn't matter. Pick your fast food chain. And instead of having the person behind the counter make your sandwich and make it wrong, you have a machine do it. And the bun goes through and it gets warmed up how it should be in the burger or the grilled chicken or whatever the sandwich is. That goes through and that gets grilled perfectly. And then your condiments are put on. Hey, you want to add a little bit of extra mayo or ketchup or whatever else. That's fine. You can totally do that. But what if we had people that were managing the robot and they weren't the robot? Right? Think about that for a minute. What if we managed the robot instead of, having people that were the robot? And I understand that there's going to be a need for lower income jobs, specifically for potentially retired people to supplement income, or college kids going to school to supplement income. Kids in high school. I understand that. And I think there will always be a market for those particular jobs. We're not going to be able to replace everything with robots, at least not yet. But it's food for thought, and so by doing that, we're going to, again, increase the cost of everything. But the goal and the idea is how can we increase income? How can we as a society provide more income for everybody? And that's how I'm going to leave it. Thank you so much for listening. Truly appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let me know. Leave me a comment. Send me an email. sold@kenparkin.com. Thank you, and have a great day.